Okay, well, really, I mean, obviously there's multiple steps in the budget, but I think the biggest chunk of it, always anyway, personnel's typically 82 to 85% of a budget. And in that 82 to 85%, the largest dollar amount are include your certified staff salaries. So the conversation, of course, is what do we need to do to fix, number one, the oddities, that's the way I can describe it, of our hour schedule, our certified schedule, as well as move our salaries forward to where we're making progress on being competitive with our neighbors. And what I shared with everyone was just a comparison with Johnson City and Sullivan County. And then, did that last time and then gave you all some possible scenarios. These are just hypothetical situations, and then have a corresponding cost to those to show for a comparison within our own scale, what we currently have and what it might look like if we applied some of these scenarios. So I believe, one of them, at the top of each one, option A, was moving the base, which is 0 year, $2,000, and then applying, as you can see, various amounts of step increases across the scale to make the transition.
You want to start working? You want to work in?
Can I ask
Whatever
a
y'all
question?
want.
Yes, sir.
Of the new money that's coming from,
If the legislation
if we get
passes the
this,
funding
how
model.
much of that money can be used for this?
Well, I mean, the correct answer is as much as the board designates. I mean, there'll be a minimum amount because there will be, in the governor's expectation, across the board increases for teachers. Of course, most boards, just like Washington County, when there's an increase that the state says needs to happen, they always try to make sure they address all employees, not just the teachers. But the expectation is it'll be a minimum amount for teachers. So to answer your question, in that $8 million, it would not be realistic to say that all the $8 million can go to salaries because we have other costs. You have to add positions. I mean, some of the requests too are, yeah, we want our salaries increased, but we need more teachers, we need more counselors, we need more, other folks to work with kids. So you can't address all that. So I would say, realistically, if you look at half of that amount is realistic.
So the other half would come from fund balance, would have to come from fund balance.
But wouldn't it, the way it is today, if we made a decision right now, all of it's gonna come out of fund balance, because that may not come to fruition.
For next year, in this conversation, for next year's budget, it would be
Fund balance.
fund balance. We know a couple, or we don't know, but we expect the conversation about raising maintenance of effort is not going to be in the board's favor. It's going to stay where it's at, most likely. But we also know in projections of our local option sales tax revenue, it has increased unbelievably over the last 2 years. But we know it with the exception of a catastrophe, it's not going to go backwards. In the 25-year look, it's only been a couple times where it's flat or dropped a little, but it's corrected itself. So the incline, as far as every year, is going to be a positive slope. So to answer your question, yes, it's a combination of fund balance in the sense of we have recurring revenue that goes straight into fund balance from our local option sales tax.
Well, I was just trying to, we got to figure out what we're gonna do for the other people.
Right.
How much of a raise is going to be that. So, if we went with B or, Whitney was talking, he likes A, well, know, if we're overhauling this thing, let's overhaul it right and fix it right.
A will get a to be on.
And
I like
section
A.
B or
I'm
option
sorry.
B,
Option A will get where we want them to be down the road.
yeah.
And it
That's
gives
what I
a
like about
raise
it.
every year.
Yes.
You're not, you don't stay
But you're only getting 1,075 at 1 to 15 and a
600 from year 16,
616
25.
to 25, is that?
But I mean, I feel like that's, you know, that 16 to 25 is where we're trying to keep them. And just with that 600, I just don't think it's worth changing the salary schedule
Well,
for that.
And if you look at our current one,
Proposal C is, I'm sorry, but I'm just talking, but proposal C is.
Chad noticed
Well,
that.
that's all right, so our Chad.
Whatever you're
Is
doing.
2% at 25, straight 1 through 25, so.
So, let's back into this, well, go ahead, Chad. Go ahead if you must.
Just
We
whenever
can't
you-
cable it.
I got 3 questions.
Oh, my.
First,
That's good.
first one, and we'll all go ahead and give you some time if you don't care, but our uncertified staff, 3% raise, how much that cost us? 5% raise, how much that cost us? The third question I have is, we looked at Johnson City, we looked at Sullivan County, but I didn't see, I wasn't that good on looking, trying to compare, are we where's halfway to them? Is option C half or a third of the way? B, is it a half or a third of the, you know what I'm saying, to Sullivan County, which was less than Johnson City, but which one is,
It's
Sullivan was like
based on
90%.
time.
right, but that's what I'm saying, is which one is
Get you there quicker.
half, no, well, half that way there, or a third of the way there, if we were gonna say this was gonna be a 3-year process or whatever. Is there an answer to that?
I've not done that analysis. I mean, definitely could. It would have to, I'd put it back into, you know, take that
Side
and
by side.
I think
compare
Whitney
each of
did
the
it.
changes.
So if you
Yeah.
look at them, if you look at what our expense is versus the goods you get out of it, that option A is the least expensive at 4.3 million. But as we go and consistently give raises over the lifetime of the employee, we meet and exceed them eventually. We will pass them because where we had like a flat spot from years 10 on, where you got 0, you're getting consistent raises, and over the lifetime of the employee, they will come out ahead. By the time we get to 25 years, our employees will be making more.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of difference. We're still a little low in the beginning, and maybe we could look at adjusting that to get in the ballgame there. I don't know. That might be something we look at. But that is considerably cheaper initially, and then that frees up money to do the non-certified staff now.
That's what, I really wanna see what those numbers are gonna be, because
What's wrong with C and what's wrong with these other ones?
Well, that's what I was thinking. C is a straight 2% for 25 years.
Well, if you look at the bottom line, let's see,
It's $5.2 million.
so you're another $1 million today.
But does that do everybody? Is this just still
This is just.
certified
Certified.
staff?
Just certified.
Now,
This is
now,
still certified.
now, again, Brad's pulled out everybody that's not considered a classroom teacher.
so can he tell us what the 3 and 5% is, if we done that for this year, how much
Yeah,
it
he
costs?
can. He's got everybody else, and just applying for them, that simple, you know, we're not addressing the structure, we're not moving the scale.
Right, just to see.
We're just moving it through an applied across-the-board increase for the others outside of correcting the teacher scale.
Let me ask one more thing with that. Let's make sure we stay on the same page. So we're talking non-certified staff at the moment.
I just wanna see what them numbers are,
3 and
because that's gonna
5%.
that's gonna be added to these.
Right.
Yeah, it's an addition.
So my question is, with the other thing we got to talk about for the new scale for life, are we taking that in consideration with these, like when you're talking to me about a raise right now, that's just right now.
Well, it'll raise all those scales up, 3
Right.
or 5%, right?
You want in?
Yeah, I for just for a second while you're talking about this, and I don't know what the answer is, but
I thought what we were trying to do was get our certified staff to a stronger market rate,
Yes.
so that we'd be more competitive.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has anybody asked the question, is our non-certified staff out of sync with the market?
Well, yeah, it's out.
Yes, it is.
No, I don't know.
Walmart or something.
Well, comparably with other school
With
systems.
other school
but all
systems.
school systems are struggling with our non-certified.
Okay, I mean, that was the, the rationale. for
Yeah, I
this
mean, that
idea.
too, we have to continue to move their wages
Okay.
and salaries if they're professional, non-certified, and not on an hourly wage.
I
We gotta
think we need to
continue
look at them
those.
separately, honestly. I think we need to fix this first, and then we move on and work on the other.
I
I don't
would
think you
prefer
can
that.
fix the non-certified this year. I don't think you can do it all this year.
Well, I don't either, I just
But we can
think,
give them a raise.
right, and see what
move
that
them.
number is compared
And
to.
I think you have to have more time to study what all those salaries and things need to be for the non-certified.
You do, I mean, comparatively in the market, we do, it's easy to recognize in some areas where we're off as a school system with comparable market, but then some are not that easy to tell. You have to really dig in and look. Brad, what was the 5% outside of the teacher salary scale increase?
And I have three that I've been asked for, and I can give all the info, write it down. First, the 5% for classified staff only, that would be non-teacher licensed employees. And this is a lot less because you have to remember the average salary is a lot less when you compare it to certified staff. So for a 5% pay increase for all classified staff, $578,050 is the estimate there. I'll go ahead and give you the 3%, and I was also asked for a 6%. 3% classified staff raise is $346,830. For a 6% classified staff raise, that would be $693,660.
Where are we at that's additional funds, right? What is our base, what's the base of that?
So for every 1%, is that what you're asking?
Oh, for, what are we spending now, right here
What's
this
it
year?
cost today?
Well, divide 578 by 5%.
Yeah, you know who you're talking to. David.
This may not be what you're asking, but every 1% is $115,610 for every 1%
I think what he's
raise.
asking is what's it cost us today? Last year, what did we pay non-certified
I'll
staff? Is that
pull
what
up,
you're
I'll
asking?
pull up another sheet and I'll tell you in just a minute.
No. What was the amount of
Yeah.
money?
I can tell you in just a minute, I just need to pull up another document.
I thought it's 5.
No.
It was full.
No.
The question is, what was the amount? Was it 400,000? Was it 500,000? What was where are we at today? Is that right? He just wants to know what it
Should be
is.
549, 147 high, right?
Say
What
that
we
again.
paid to non-certified last year, was it 500 and some $1,000?
It was a 4% raise.
Forget the raise.
Okay.
What did you pay them? What was the total payroll?
The entire payroll?
Yeah.
Okay. It'll take me a moment to tell you that.
David had something before we get
Well,
sidetracked.
I was just gonna say this, I do wanna give everybody a raise, but I'm kinda looking at this as an adjustment like we did for food service, like we've done for other employees. We've never done an adjustment per se for the teachers. And I'd like to talk about this and then talk about the other in with next, or when we're talking about the budget.
I agree, amen. But,
If you wanna do this, though, that's the only reason I wanna know this. 'cause
Oh, I
we
understand
went
what
from
you're saying.
5.5 million.
Because we gotta add whatever we
5%, there's
spend.
6 million.
Oh, I understand, I
Yeah.
just wanna make sure we don't knock.
so,
Not do one, not to do that.
I don't
I
wanna-
understand.
let's go what you're saying, let's go back to what Whitney said. So, you've obviously studied this pretty well. So, I don't have a problem passing everybody else in the future, but which one brings you more in line in the future?
Well,
Did you look at that deep?
I looked at all of it, yeah. I think from a budgetary standpoint, recurring funds, if you went with the highest and best where you pass everybody, that's a wonderful thing, but it's recurring. And then if you've got an extra $1 million every year to do that, that may not be doable for us. We may not be able to sustain that.
I've got it.
So you're really trying to get the most bang for your buck, is what you're trying to do.
And catch that.
But what he said right there, I'm looking at the new money that we're coming. If this board designates at least half of the new money for salaries, then all we have to pull out will be just a little bit out of fund balance the next year. That's why I'm saying, if we're gonna get $8 million, let's put 4 of it into salaries and then pull the rest of it from fund balance after next year.
I don't think this is a permanent fix-all, but I think it's a step in the right direction. We may have to adjust it a little in a couple of years or something. The market will say that we have to, but we're putting forth a great effort to get there. I mean, that's a big step to get there. That's a lot, but we're getting in the ball game. And eventually, like I say, as the years go with this structure, you pass them. So your long-term employees will do better.
So let me ask you a question. So, we know right now we got the money to do what we need to do. To your point, in 7 years from now, whoever's sitting up here don't have that much money. Is, in other words, if we make a decision today, it's gonna affect somebody like it is
Yeah,
us. Like it is us.
That was my
Always.
question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, again, for me, A doesn't look very much better than what we already have, because we're still trying to retain, that's our goal. Second of all, we will never surpass Johnson City, ever. No matter what we add on here, they're gonna continue to add.
Did you
On
look
top
at
of
them
that-
side by side
Yeah.
with Johnson City?
Yeah, but they're gonna add this year. So they're gonna continue to add. We're never going to be, we can get, satisfactory, we can get a good living wage for our teachers. So they will stay because they're happy here and they don't have to go get a second job as they're having to do right now. Also, whenever we're looking at this, you gotta realize we have a lot of teachers who in the next 4 to 5 years are going to retire. That puts a lot back into this first category. So what money we have now is gonna continue to circle, and it may be less at sometimes and more at sometimes, because we are going to be losing those 25-year teachers and more, because we have, I can't, as we walk through the school, you could see who is looking. We had 85 at the retirement thing, so we're looking at losing 85 in the next 3 to 4 years.
Could we, as important as this is, I hate to put you on the spot, Brad, but could we look at each option and do a pro and con? Would that be possible? I mean, we've looked them over, but I'm not that much of a numbers person, that I wanted to know real, is that okay? Could you kind of give us
I guess it would, what type of pros and cons?
well,
like more
option A,
specific?
it gives more at the front. Is that what their goal is, or no?
Everything, the 0-year raises on every one of these options. And every step raises significantly on every one of these options. It's just how much. The
Okay.
cost.
B,
Y'all wanna write this down real quick? And then Mitch has got something. Give it to us, Brad.
So the most accurate number I can give you right now with like detailed reports, cost of classified staff pay annually, $10,832,000.
You want the non-classified plan?
That's what he's talking about.
Classified would be non-teachers.
Yes.
So you have actually in front of you the cost of
Right.
certified staff on that document.
Thank you.
So that 5%, so you apply that 5% times that number, and it's gonna get you back close to the
It
578,000.
should be very close. I didn't do it like that, but let's just for kicks do that.
How many non?
542,000, Mitch, is what that, my number of 582 is exact within the budget though, so
How many classified staff is there just for
about 404.
4?
And that would not include food service, which
How
there'll
many?
be about 60, 65 employees in food service.
That's why I wanted to ask you.
Annette said something that caught my ear a second ago, and talking about our long tenured teachers that are close to retirement. And I think on here we're looking at, what, 73 that are 25 years or more. But I'm wondering if we really should count on that, because if we went with option A, if I'm understanding this correctly, and if I'm misunderstanding it, let me know. If we went from option A on a bachelor's, which is $49,938 right now, then if we adopted option A, that same teacher would be making $63,398.
That's correct.
And for your Ed D, it's $67,900 to $75,500. I guess what my question is given TCRS and your high five and all that, does that tend to incentivize
I would
them
think
to
it
stay?
would.
I think it would too.
Yeah,
So I don't think you're gonna have that turnover.
maybe not.
I'll free up those dollars.
Yeah, if you
I'm always
take,
interested with how the, you know, from a teacher's perspective, and you're setting up a system to educate, you know, where do you need to focus your resources? Is it in the middle of that curve somewhere, or is it at the end, or what? So,
In all the scenarios, you'll notice the higher years experience has the largest increase, because that's just the way the numbers have to be to make this thing work.
but my question is that the way it should be?
I don't know if we're either right or wrong.
No?
Well, I mean, especially in a pension system, even though a good number of our teachers now and employees are on the hybrid, calculate on the top 5, so that's how that works, of course. Because that top 5 tops out at 15 years, 20 years, 25, 30.
I still think if you compare this, like just A, for example, or whichever one, anything you compare to our current, it's significantly different.
Yes.
It's a game changer. It is. I mean, and again, if you compare that with Johnson cities and Sullivan counties, I would encourage you to do that and look at them line by line and see the difference and how it grows. I mean, it's significant, and your tenured teachers gain significant amounts of money today, and that incentivizes them to stay, so that discourages turnover.
So why are you against, not that you're against, but
Well,
say, option C?
Yeah.
Why would you
Well, if you
not
look at the
want?
numbers on it, look at your bottom line,
Mhm.
all right, if you look at that back page,
Yeah, 5248.
so we're
$1
almost $1 million more, and that's recurring funds. And then if you look at, as the teachers' salaries go, let's just say you get to the end there, look at year, look at year 25 in those two, option A and option C. So option A is 63,398 and C is 67. So you've got $4,000 difference, but that's at year 25. But which of both of these should exceed what Johnson City's paying at that point, I think.
Based right now.
So at this point here,
But that's $25 million
right.
difference.
So if we go back and we adjust the whole scale, and we're doing, so every year you're getting 2% raise, 2%, 2%, 2%.
Step increase.
Step increase.
Yep.
So the board would have, if the board chooses to give them more, do they, I mean, I guess they have that ability, but would there be a need really for that? If we catch this thing up to everybody else,
It'd have to be.
Well, every time you have that conversation about, time to give an increase, then it gets all the way down the scale.
Yeah.
So it would increase everything, from the zero pay, the base pay, everything below it that gets impacted by the increase. It's 1%, 5 to whatever percent.
so if I sit here next year, and I did this today, and I sit here next year, I really don't have to discuss it because it's already in place. Everybody knows what they're getting.
we've not give the other.
I know,
He's
but
just
I'm
talking
just
about
saying,
teachers.
right now, just teachers, if I sit
Now,
here next year.
how much would it cost to put this across our whole system? A 2% step increase across the whole system.
It would double the classified
But they
amount.
already have their step increase.
Yeah, you don't need to give, you don't need to re-give them.
The others don't have it. For next year, I'm saying everybody gets a 2% step increase right across.
Well, that's what I'm
We've
asking. I
already-
think that's you're handling it
We've
now.
already adjusted that. We've adjusted it over time. Brad's been bringing it to us
You-
and adjusting those
But
steps.
I understand what
You
you're
might
saying.
give everybody else a raise next year, but you
Yes.
may not need to give them one.
You're
You're
not-
doing it right now.
Well,
I know what Keith's asking.
May
Am I
I,
wrong?
in the current scales, and we'll talk about classified schedule, their step increases are calculated by 1% increase from each year. So I think what Mr. Urban's talking about is what would it look like in cost if you went from a 1% increase each year to a 2% increase for every scale that is there. And just quick math, if you did that, it'd probably double the cost of the classified amount.
And that wouldn't count any raise if you wanted to give them. They'd just still be getting the 2%, like the teachers is.
Me and Mike was looking there just a minute ago on a 10-year teacher, option A and option D. Like Whitney is saying, I mean, just going down through here and simplifying them, going to 10, 10, 10, from A, B, C, D, A and D is the one that's gonna change them the most.
Who is?
A and D.
If you look at A and B.
So at least that's what Whitney was saying, is if you look at that, I mean, there's $600,000 difference between the total cost on D versus A. And if you took the 600,000 off of their certified, you'd be spending D, but you'd be doing both. Does that make sense? And that's the reason why I wanted those numbers for just the classified staff, is whatever we do, it's gonna be total amount, not fix one and then, well, we can't afford the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So if you, no, I mean, if you look at that, like Whitney was saying, you see a huge difference.
Yeah, I think that option A gives those teachers in the middle, the ones with the 7, 8 year tenure, and the ones you don't want to lose.
Yeah, 10 years is zero.
Yeah.
From 10 up right
If you
now.
go every 5 years, you can see the difference.
You know, and A
From
kind
5,
of
10,
tends to
15 years.
bring you there and puts that incentive, if you will, to hang in here for, you know, the first 15 years.
I just want to make a great impact right now, and if it means that I don't spend 600 more or whatever, I ain't saying that's nothing in the grand scheme of things, but we need to make a great impact right now that somebody don't have to sit here and do this again.
Well,
Whatever
I
that
think you
is.
still want to do it again. This right here gives us a great step forward
We got
that
one
we've
big
got
step
further
right now.
than what we've ever done
Well, let me ask,
before.
What did you like about D as opposed
I
to?
liked A better
You
than
liked
D.
A the
just
But what
because-
he's saying, we could take option A
The
along
six.
with the 6% to the non-classified and spend what option D was gonna cost us.
And you'd be done.
And still, and be done, and your salaries will be the same on D as is A at 5, 10, 15 years.
Well, where's it change at? Why is it
15 to 25.
The 25 years is where it changes.
when they're retiring?
They're not
That's pretty
retiring for
important.
5 more years, and it's very important because those last 5 years basis,
That's when they need
you're
the money to
retired.
work.
That's when they need the money the worst.
Your top 5 consecutive.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know,
So,
if you went, to a different role and your salary dropped,
Well, in 25
but
years.
you
though,
had
they've
5 consecutive that were hired, that's what's gonna be calculated in your.
And that's something we can fix next year, or year after.
Well, I think in 25 years though, they've had an opportunity. They've paid off their college. There's different, and I'm not saying there's no more bills come up, but they've also had a chance to get their masters, get their bachelors. If you go with B or C, then yeah, it is better for the 25 year probably, but not over the life like A and D is.
and B
So-
doesn't start out as much.
Well,
They're
you'll
just a
never
little
catch
bit.
up to A
Right,
and
that's-
D,
So
from
what
B,
you're
C,
saying
B,
it
and C.
would. Oh, okay.
I mean, and I don't know that your first few years is not more critical than you start because of your life. You know, what's going on in your life. When you get older, I'm not saying you don't need no more money, but at the same time, some of your priorities have changed. You
So
know, you ain't
maybe-
paying off your school loans, or, you know what I'm saying? And you've also had an opportunity to get your master's, get your BS and master's, I assume, a doctorate, if you so choose.
So maybe you extend this to 30.
Well, I think we know what the 25 costs now.
Right, but what I'm saying is if, you know, it seems like the consensus, if you talk, is A. But what bothers me is those last 5 years, so why don't we just add it to 30?
Well, and I want to know though if it'll be any cheaper, and I was going to get into this later, is getting rid of some of these roads, like some of the other systems.
You will automatically combine Masters, Masters 10, and Masters 20 on any of these scenarios
Yeah.
already.
Yeah, they're already the same.
And it's because even today, those three start out at the same money. They just had different increases previously, so, but because they start out at the same money, all of these scenarios would combine those three.
And two, if I'm looking at it right, options A and D gets their salary up quicker up front.
So if you pay this money now.
Then we could look at it
Really
5 years
affects
from
them
now,
25
and see what we could do from 15 to 25.
You're just paying.
But
it
A and D,
forward.
I think, is our quick fix for right now.
You're paying it right now.
It's a step
it's
forward.
gonna-
Yeah, it's
it'll
one
make
big
it-
step for
I think
the,
it's a huge step forward.
Oh, I do too.
To fixing the scale. And I think it's a sincere and earnest
Mhm.
show on our part to get there.
How much more is
Have we
option
done a
C?
number like-
Because as far as the,
Hypothetical.
it seems to be,
So let's say it's
Option C,
$1,000
they
now.
wouldn't increase their
One
salary
year,
till after
500
20 years
This year.
with option
And
C
then
and D.
you
But
get your 2%.
again, like Annette said, that's where you want your money.
What does this
before
number
retirement.
become
yeah.
with this on this?
Is that, because that's what your
Two-
retirement's
two
based
Yeah,
on.
point
because
something.
right now, that's what their retirement's based on. I think
Yeah.
now, what they put in to TCRS is what they
So
get
really,
out.
You do
So
this
it
big
doesn't,
hit
you know,
this year,
but
you
they
don't
can
need
put
that
more
next year.
in so
You
they
don't
can
need
get
that
more
again
out.
next year.
But their social
You need
security is based
2%
upon their
of the
last
total.
5 years of performance.
Their legacy, their
They're
legacy
highest.
TCRS plan
Is
is,
it?
the hybrid's not.
The hybrid's
Right.
not the
I'm trying to say,
legacy.
am I gonna have to do this again next year, or am I gonna do half of that?
I mean, then you have, that, you know, so
We get them up right now.
when,
It's the
so
first
that,
jump.
Brad,
Biggest jump.
you build it in and it becomes that set point, that's your
For
cost.
right now.
But then the
But
next
not
year,
for
the
20.
rollover, the cost, you know, like we always share, just going from 1 year to the next, the
30.
step increase cost is X.
Accumulated $600.
This is a big increase, but next year, yeah, there'll be an increase, but it won't be.
As big.
I mean, it's already moved to $4 or $5 million.
Right.
Then the next year, the increase just going from one step to the next across the board for all employees will be less. That's what Brad shares with everyone. This is the cost for certified, and this is the cost for non-certified classified staff. And
So that-
it's not $4.4 million.
That's what I was trying to get to. So it's $1 million today, but next year it ain't gonna be but
But it's still,
3.
you raise your annual expenses.
Right.
$4 million recurring.
Right.
Mr. Herbert's point.
But it's not this number. In other words, we're saying, well, this is $1 million
Once it's incorporated into your
more,
budget, yes, unless you go back.
but it's not $1 million every year. I mean, it's gonna be several $1 million, but
It's not $5 million.
but you see what I'm saying?
It's not an additional 5 million increase on top.
Every
Right,
year.
On top of that.
right.
Every year.
But we're saying here today that it's $1 million more, but it's just today.
No.
We're saying today, in all of these scenarios, the lowest, I mean, we're just use round numbers, $4 million for the certified salary, plus we'll just use a high number for classified, if you apply a raise to everybody outside the schedule, $5 million. That moves it.
Right.
And then the recurring cost, I mean, it's there, that's where your budget baseline is. But then the addition next year because of step raises is smaller.
Right.
Yes.
So in other words, this $5 million is what percent? what percent of our budget is this $5 million?
$5 million of $80 million budget,
So it's like what? 1, 2,
and that's a 7.5%.
7.5%. So next year it would be 2% of that number. That's what I'm trying to get at.
The total budget amount, yes.
Yes, so
Yes,
when
that's
you're
what-
saying
that's what I
it's
was
$1 million,
asking.
it's just today, next year you're only gonna jump. So this number today is
But
7%.
it moves your baseline,
Right,
$5 million.
right,
But then the next year, when you have the addition of costs to roll over to increase steps that are built in,
right.
it will not be $5 million.
Right.
It'll be
Be a lot
where you
less.
were plus the
Well,
amount.
But that $5 million will be this year. and
Yeah, but
next
that's why I say it
year,
moves your
and next year.
baseline.
It's there.
It's
But
in
it
your
ain't,
budget.
but it ain't,
You've moved your baseline up 5
Yeah,
million, so it is recurring.
well, you moved your baseline up 1 million. If you go from the 4 to the 5, you move your baseline up to 1. But next year, if you set this scale up to 2%, you're not having to go up 5% of that, you're just going up 2% of that. You with me?
No, really. No, I'm saying that if you up your pay for this certified staff $5 million this year, it's gonna be $5 million more next year. Not
Be $5
additional,
million
but that's your
plus
baseline.
2%.
For life,
Yeah.
Right,
but it's a one-time fee.
no,
The $1 million is.
you're paying 5 million.
Next year, I'm just paying you 2,
You're paying 5 million more every year.
but I'm only
Than
paying
currently.
2% next
Yeah.
year.
In addition.
Plus what you,
You're stepping.
You're
But I'm
doing
doing that
You're
anyway.
doing the 5 million plus 2%.
right.
So, you know,
I mean,
Oh,
after
I'd have
each,
to see it.
after each one of these,
What you're trying to say is right.
You know what I'm saying?
after each one, you know, at the bottom of each one of these
Yeah.
options, there's an additional
I thought
expense.
that's right.
And the one I'm looking at right now, option B, I just picked the one off of Mr. Irvin's pile. If option B is implemented, that's a estimated cost, additional costs are increased to the budget, $4.9 million. That would be your new baseline for the budget.
right.
So the next year after that, that's your starting point. And then when you calculate the step increases, it will not be $4.9 million, but you're on top of what you've already set your baseline.
But your 4.9 is recurring. I
Yes,
mean,
it's your
every
new
year.
budget.
From here on, it's $4.9 million, you just up your
In
baseline.
recurring costs, yes, sir.
So it's there.
It's
Well,
there.
it's-
But
I
you're
know.
saying you're just saying it's not that, but it is there.
It's there, but, so let's say the payroll, what's the payroll for the year?
Let's just say $45 million.
45 million. What I'm saying is that 1 million, you're gonna get that extra million every year, I realize that. But every year, I'm only giving you a 2% raise instead of a 5% raise. So I'm only taking a really big hit today. But every year,
But
you're not
you're still
getting, you're not
paying the
adding
same
5% every time.
But if our salaries
One
are
time.
45 million this year, it's gonna be 50 million next year. Plus 2%.
Plus 2%.
Right.
But it ain't gonna be plus 10.
No,
It's 7 today is what I'm trying to tell you. It's 7%.
yeah, if you look
Today.
at the
It
percentage,
ain't gonna be 7% no more.
Yeah, it will.
It'll be 5
It's added in there.
or 2. It'll be 2
It's whatever, 5 million from now on is added from today's
plus 2%.
plus
It's
2%.
the
Yeah.
same $5 million that'll be paid every year.
Plus
Right.
2.
And then if you add 2%, sure, but remember there's moving parts. You'll have retired
it'll go
employees
up and
retiring,
down with
you'll have
teachers.
entry level,
Won't be exactly
It'll
so
fluctuate.
yeah, I mean,
because
Yeah.
everybody's salary's different.
yeah, because
And
when
then
you
you have new teachers
have
coming and
retired
teachers retiring, so it'll fluctuate.
Right.
And if your older teachers retire and take their bigger salary, your younger one that's coming on, their salaries won't be as high. So the percentage won't, the raise of the percentage won't be as high.
So does that eat up my $1 million or not?
Right. Well, we don't know. It's based upon how many retires and how many we rehire.
Is there a way to figure that roughly?
It would, you know, I think to bring it back to what I understand the goals about the certified scale is we want to address the anomalies, the structure, the problem of the structure where we had from year 11 to 20, no increase, and then from, after that, there's really a very minor increase, and then there's no more increases at all for somebody that, from year 11 until they retire. That's how in our current scale. And then the other fact is that we are significantly behind our neighbors, and they're the best, or one of the most realistic benchmarks we have, because when we're hiring teachers or retaining teachers, unless somebody's willing to really look and move far away, that's going to be the first place they look if they're looking to increase your salary or for a different opportunity. So, adjusting our scale to fix the structure, address the fact that we have such an inequity with our teachers that have been with us 11 years plus. And then also our starting pay is not where it should be either, so everything before that. So address that, recalibrate our scale, and you just have to really what would be the landing spot would be how much money would the board be willing to raise that baseline budget, 4 million, 5 million annually. And from there, we can make the scale work and finalize that with the board and with our collaborative conferencing process. But it's really about that last number on the bottom of each one of these. Of course, just like Mr. Riddle said and Mr. Fleener said, look at where it is now. Go to year 10 masters, and then look at all these other, and see the impact the change would have on the individual that falls in that spot. But as a board, it's really about
The bottom line.
4.9 million, 4.3 million, 4.4 million, 5.1 million. Where is the spot the board feels is a landing spot to build into the scale and correct the problem? Yes, sir.
Quick question. You said that under the new state funding plan, we're looking at an additional $8 million?
That's the projection for FY24, yes, sir.
And so we've got that.
2 years from now.
Right. And then we've also got, if you're just looking at our budget to our actuals, we've got about another $4 million in sales tax.
Yes,
So I'm thinking
Yes.
we got $12 million.
potentially, yes, sir.
In
That's
recurring
recurring.
dollars.
Yeah, that's the key. Recurring with, and you understand this better than probably everybody in the room, with the idea that sales tax revenue at best is going to stay the same.
Right.
And the likelihood, based on, the projections from past, it will.
We don't go into a recession here.
Well, understand, there's always that. There's always that. And that happened in 07, 08, but then it came, right back up. Yes.
And this is just my personal opinion, but I'm gonna share it, because everybody's got one.
We want to hear it.
But I like option A. I don't think this is the end. I think this is the beginning. I don't want to count on the extra 9 or 8 million that's coming in from TISA, because that's a hope and a prayer.
That's a 4-year deal right now.
So I'd like to see us make in this movement, get everybody to buy in, county commission, our staffs, everybody to be aware of what we're doing. This is what we want to do. And this is just a step this year. And in 2 years, when TISA, it's coming, and say the sales tax is still growing, maybe we take another jump. And be cognizant of the fact that we're not done. This is just the floor. We're moving the floor.
This is
This is a big deal.
This is phase one.
It is.
It's an attempt to close the gap, and we're closing it quicker than I ever thought we would.
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna take years. This gets us in the same ballgame. And then I would have a question. If we amend this in a couple of years, by going with a simple scale like that, how hard would it be to adjust that? What would be, is that a big deal?
Well, it would be, the traditional way to apply it, just like we did with the existing scale, is just Brad would go through and say, if the board approved on all scales, certified and uncertified, a 3% raise, it would just be.
So this whole thing would bump up 3%, and that's how we would adjust
You
it.
would apply it there, and it would bump, it would move everything.
Would that do your 1,075 and your 600 per year, would that be your adjustment, or your base would adjust? or-
It would adjust, the way our scale works, it would adjust that too. So this is setting a baseline, and when, in the future years, boards that do those increases, it's gonna impact the actual salary and then the amounts between. But if they're equal, or close to equal, then it'll equally adjust all the way down the scale. Instead of what happens now, it's
So-
unequal,
Right.
and it's also, several years where it, 0 times 0 is a 0.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it would equally and equitably adjust everyone's
Yes.
pay. But, and we are looking to shrink these lines, number of columns down as well. Can we do that?
What we would do is what Brad has pointed out, if we collapse and reduce the number of lanes from, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 to 4 or 5, whichever makes the most sense. It would be where nobody would go backwards, everybody would, within the lane they're in, no matter if it's a plus 10, plus 20, if you go to a plus 30 only, you've got to find a way to make that equitable for everybody.
So, going back, I mean, this scale, we'll make sure I'm clear on this. This scale, if we adopted, for example, A, then next year when you all come back and look at this, and Brad says, okay, we've got a 2% step, because the scale's got to move every year, okay? Those base numbers have to move, otherwise you're locking people in, and that's it, right? Am I understanding this?
Yes, sir.
So that 2% step that you would apply to the scale, 2% times 38 million is $760,000 in additional cost if you were to move the scale forward.
And he can even be more granular with it, because he has his matrix of how many are in each scale.
Right.
And he can calculate a more exact cost just based on that matrix. So it's-
Who else?
What are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, we just gotta
But you got a different tax.
get some equal minds and,
Sure.
Are you wanting a motion on one of these, or?
I don't know.
Is that
No,
what we-
sir, I
to that
mean,
point?
let me, if you can, let me share, and then you all give me direction and tell me to go another way. But, this is pretty, this is a big conversation. It's not just gonna impact our teacher schedule, it impacts our other employees as well. I feel like tonight's conversation should be and needs to be just focused on this, but, we have scheduled one more, at least 2 more, and we need to make progress in between each one of these. If the board can at least decide where that comfort zone is about maybe not, because there are some, over the weekend, I created 3 more options. And Brad may have as well that I'm not aware of, but I created 3 more options this weekend. All of them have the same trend. It increases across the board. It's just different ways of doing it. And then I looked at the end amount, that total cost of the scale basically to increase in our, so there's other options, but if you all identify a level, like I said, 4.4 million, 4.4, whatever, that we need to target, then we start fitting these scales into that amount.
So in other words, you want maybe a number we want to spend.
Well, that's why I give you multiple scales. It tells me, you see the increases, but you also see the total cost, and it gives me an idea about as far as the type of change to the scale that you all really would like to see, and then also the total amount that you believe is reasonable and possible.
I'd say take split the baby, so to speak, take $4.5 million that you're gonna apply to this, and then set your scale so that it gives you the best opportunity to recruit and retain
Yes.
the staff you need to have.
Yes.
So that.
Well, I agree with that. I think ultimately that's one of the big areas we certainly want to address with this. That also involves, once we kind of get to that point, that's where it would involve engaging our teachers, our collaborative conferencing group, to look at that, for them to see exactly the impact it would have on all of the teachers. it would also, we would want to do something similar with whatever was decided about everybody outside of this scale, any increase, so they see what's going to impact them, how it's going to impact them. But like you said, I mean, if the recommendation is 4.5, 4, whatever, I mean, we can fit it, we can meet the trends that you all see in all of these options, and we can fit it, it could be exactly that amount, and also the impact that we want to see, not just next year, but we want to see long-term what's going to happen with teacher salaries.
I truly do not like the difference in adding on option A. It just looks bad. It just looks bad. It looks like that these people that's 1,075 is more important than the ones that are 600, and I know, I don't like it.
What are you saying?
The numbers at the top, I don't like them. I mean, that's just,
Well, I mean, I did that as a description of the,
Right.
on the math, that was you. Yes.
but I do not like it because it just looks, it looks like those people are not as important as these people down here. And they certainly are, because they're the seasoned ones.
If you look at what they're gonna gain when we shift this scale, it's gonna be significant, thousands of dollars. It's not gonna be 600. When you shift them up into the scale, it's a huge difference.
Brad, where does the tax brackets divide at in this? Is he still sitting back there? I can't see.
I'm here, yeah, I don't have it marked with IRS tax brackets.
And those are gonna
Because that,
change, correct?
yeah, and that'll make a huge deal, especially with those 600s, because if you get $1 over, that's gonna eat that up. So I just,
And I can Google, it's going to depend on if they're married, if they're single,
Right.
how many deductions they claim. So
That's true.
there's a lot that would go into how much taxes they would have.
Well, like y'all said, the first 10 years are the same. But I guess what my thought is, and I'm not there yet, but I mean, if at 25 years, is it more important to make extra $4,000 or $5,000 a year at 60 years old? You're not really changing anything on the front end.
Depends on if you're
If you
60
look
or
at-
45.
If you look at what we have now, currently, at year 15, they're making $48,782. If we push them into the new scale, they'll get a $9,000 a year raise at that point, plus a $600 step. I would rather have $9,000 more a year and get a little step every year. I mean, that's just me.
On which one now?
If you look at,
Look at
well,
number
just
10.
for example, on year 15,
Go to year 10, that's one Jason's looking
I got them
at.
all marked on year 10.
so that's almost $8,000 more. They're getting an $8,000 a year raise,
Quicker.
quicker. They're getting $8,000 more plus a $600 step after 15. So you're getting significant more money. The 600 it's just a little something. I'd rather have $9,000 a year and get a $600 bump and make $9,600 more the next year.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
we could also too, if we was to go with option A, is in 24, when we get our next big money, we could look at go with option A, then amend it from 15 to 25. With whatever money we get.
you mean 25 to 30?
Well, yeah, well, if we go 30, but I'm just going by what's on this scale.
Yeah,
I
that makes
think
sense.
you need to look at
Then we could
what-
up that last 10 years of their employment.
And I know what you're saying about the $600, but I don't look at it like that as I do for the last few years, is from 11 to 19, we didn't do
It was
anything.
zero.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
another thing about that
We
too,
lose
and that you're either paying them really well on the front end
Or really well
not
on the
as well
back end.
back end. That's why, that was my question. I don't know, because I ain't there.
But then their lifetime earnings increase.
It's a big
Yes.
difference. But I don't,
Shift them out. No, I mean, either way, I mean, so,
Either way, it's way more than what they ever got
you know,
before.
to talk about some of the cited research and studies behind this, and specific to teachers, in a teacher scale. There's a lot of discussion and research and white papers and all those things about that years basically between, say, 7 and 15. You know, there's a plateau for everybody in all their professions, but these studies were about classroom teachers, educators. And so when you then tie back and have the conversation about salary, the study showed that as far as the data, whatever, if you can believe that, effectiveness was in that range. So the teachers are most effective in those years of their career, and if you're going to tie that to outcomes, that was the argument to pay them more. And then also the retention conversation. That's when they're thinking about, they've been in their profession for 15 years, and some people say, you know, I really want to grow, I want to do something different, whether it's also grow my salary, but I want to change what I'm doing, and so that happens too in that period. That's why a lot of times scales top out. Some people make the decision, some communities, some districts make the decision to pay them a lot quick being the first 15 years, and then it kind of plateaus, and it's some incline, but you will see a lot of scales where that in-between year step is significantly smaller than it was the first 10, 15 years to get them up there. And then you think about lifetime salary, especially in a pension system or a hybrid pension system like ours. You know, they're paying in more early over the course of their career, and it raises their level of pension, basically. And if they're in a hybrid, it could significantly raise their 401k with all the other factors involved in a 401k.
Mr. Fleener.
I mean, Jerry, I'd like to lean towards option A, $4.3 million, my personal self, and try to get the classified staff. It'd be a $5 million investment. That's where I am.
How much for the classified?
It'd be 700,000,
At a
600,000.
5% across the board raise, is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I was wanting to go with a 693 and roughly the
6%.
4.3.
Okay.
It'd be a $5 million total.
If we go with option A, along with what Brad figured on a 6%, it'd be roughly $5 million.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
$5 million investment.
So apply a 6% to everyone outside the scale, and then within the scale, apply these changes in movement within the teacher scale and restructure.
I'd like to throw you a curveball on that
Okay.
6%.
Okay? Sure.
It's $1,475 a person for 470 employees. I'd rather give the $1,475 to every employee instead of saying 6%.
Huh?
So a flat increase.
Right.
So you took the total amount based on a 6% of that classified,
5 by
and
470.
and then make it a flat amount and apply it equally across all employees.
Yes.
And that would, that would have changed their hourly scale accordingly.
Whatever.
That kind of syncs up with option A for your certified staff, I mean, in the way.
And that's
that
based
works
upon
versus-
404
rather than
employees
2%.
and 65 food
So
service.
then when, people will certainly, and they should, they'll do math and they'll see, well, I'm getting an X%, and somebody else is getting a Y%. People tend
And I'm
to,
not trying to
push
pick
back on
favorites
that.
of who the,
but it is an equal distribution of that amount of money across the board with everyone in their particular category or scale.
Well, let me ask you a question.
We can show both
Why would we do that?
impacts.
Why is that, I mean, I ain't one to
Well-
say fair, because I ain't
well-
much fair. I ain't much on
you
fair,
remember
but I'm
when we
just
first
saying, why
had the
is
budget
that?
workshop, we were talking about the scale keeps getting bigger and bigger and
Mhm.
bigger and bigger. You keep doing percentages, that's what happens.
I know, I tried.
You go in there and throw a flat amount, the amount is still that different, but it raises that whole amount. But
So-
they're still the same.
Do you hit, I mean,
At a $10,000 a year employee, that'd be, let's say you give them a 6% raise, that's $600 on a $10,000 employee. At a $100,000 employee, that's a $6,000 raise. Just put that in perspective.
so,
if you-
okay, I'm following you,
Okay,
but who's gonna determine who gets what?
you give them $1,475, don't worry about it.
You give them flat.
This is
flat
outside
pay.
the scale.
I don't think that really helps you, Carter. What about you
It's
people
outside
that
of the scale.
make 12, but need to be making 16?
I'm just saying, we're doing the option A similar by adding that number. We're not doing
Well,
a
there's
percentage.
salary.
Well, we're doing the same thing. Doesn't matter if you're hourly or salary, you're figuring on the same scale.
But if you're trying to help somebody,
That helps with the one.
I'm just trying to understand it, I'm not arguing it, I know, but I mean, I'm good with that. But
I
is that
know
the
it's a
best way?
curveball, and I know it's,
And Jerry can
It's the same
tell us
dollar
more.
amount as a
Well, I
home.
mean, so
I mean, what
the
that's gonna
logic
do
or
is
the
it's
rationale I've
gonna be
heard
1.5%
in the
rate.
past
It's gonna be
used for
some
flat
people
rates.
get 10%
Across, you decide whether it's
It's,
1,400,
that's what that's for.
5,000, across the board, whatever, is that a gallon of milk costs everybody the same.
right. It's
Whether
your
they
same.
make $100,000 or $20,000. So when you apply a percentage, people, it raises their income, but a gallon of milk costs the same. So when the rationale to do a flat rate is that you're addressing cost of living increase and inflation in that way, equally. Some would argue that's not equitably, because some people in their salary get paid more, but it is an equity and an equality issue.
Well, how do you bring up though, like, so the person, you're right, the gallon of milk's the same for everybody sitting here. So this cafeteria makes $12 an hour, or Mr. Bus Driver, who else? When you say $14.75, what do you mean? What do you mean?
I took the 6%, which was 693,660. And Brad told me there was 404 besides food service, which was another 65. So that comes up to 469 employees. I just went ahead and divided that 693, 660 by 470 and come up with 1475.
Everybody.
So then to convert that to a scale, that would be on their annual salary based on the number of hours they would work in a school year at that hourly rate. And then you would just convert that back down to an hourly rate. They would adjust their hourly rate, whether it's 25 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour, whatever that would adjust it to, depending on where they fall.
Which is the same as the 5% would be. It'd be an adjustment for everybody, depending on where you were on that scale.
Right.
Your scale gets wider, but it is moving up, but it gets wider.
Well,
If it doesn't, the per person deal.
I can go with you on option A.
We can give you
But if
those
we're gonna do
scenarios.
option A, let's get serious about
Well,
option B here.
so what
Let's,
he's
if we're gonna
saying,
do something, let's do something.
Well, I'm just saying this is $5 million.
how about if we swallow option A this year and do what Chad's saying there to get everybody up and a cost of living raise because inflation, that helps with that. And that gives us time to study other systems, salaries and things, and we can address that later in a big way.
For the non-certified.
And you need to study what
Non-certified.
Jerry said about your retirees and next year when that time comes, or this year, and kind of see where that's at, because that really will help you balance out where you're at. I mean, in other words, I'm still against option A really, I like D, but I'll go with A, because I hear what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
What
But
do
I
you like
still
better
think-
about D?
Waited too long.
It's more equitable.
Yeah,
So-
if we're gonna do something, do something.
I like D
Do it
too.
big.
I think D, though, the bad thing about D is you're talking $6 million. You gotta remember,
For,
and whichever one you wanna go with, it doesn't matter, I mean, I'm just one vote. But if you, whatever you go towards, and say you take option A, and you do the 6%, the cost of inflation or raise, whatever, and then you put on, if you went to these optional budget items, there's another million of these. So if you go to D, you're $1 million more, if you go to, with the both raises.
To show that.
And then you're gonna add another $1 million for these optional deals, and I'm not saying all of them, but that's not even counting what the schools asked for, which was another $5 million.
Right.
Well, I thought we was gonna focus on this more than anything.
Well, I think we are.
You have to look at the big picture
Huh.
while you're
Yeah,
focusing.
Well, I know, but I
he's
mean-
figuring his total amount, what we're gonna have to spend, then we can start breaking it down from there as far as what we tell Jerry, as far as raises for the teachers.
Well, I mean, I thought you said option A was that.
I did, I said it was the 4.3 million.
Then
And
if
say
you
you
add
did
that
the
at
660,000 or whatever, that comes up to 5 million.
Then you add
And
this,
did
we're at
the-
6 million.
Yeah.
Then if you add this, we're 7 million.
We can do all those in between.
These
Not
are,
18.
So do we wanna spend
You know, it's-
7 million total, or do we wanna spend 8 million total?
well, I
I
just
understand
don't,
what it takes
That's
to
why I
make it
said
work.
if I get the
Wow.
number, we can come back with.
And then as you get on the commissioner, tell us not.
You better get that before I get there. I told you to spend your money. I'm telling you right now, spend your money.
Well, I mean, when we
I don't think you're hearing me.
get the 2%, then
Gotta have you in advance.
the money, we wanna give them another 2%. That'd be a 2% raise plus the 2% step.
Yeah, their annual improvement, annual salary. I understand.
Let me say this out here.
Go ahead,
I'm
Jake.
kinda on like an option C, and I was asking Jerry if we went, just give us a number on a 1.75 and a 1.5%, and do a step increase straight across for 25 years. That's where it stops at 25. And then we know what we got to deal with.
Well,
And I mean, I want to hear what our plans is for the $8 million, if we get it, that what we're going to do with the $8 million. I mean,
Well, that's in the
That's why-
$4 million of the school request that, quite honestly, cannot happen this year.
I agree. I
But
agree.
that's part of the conversation the next year about they've indicated, you verified, that are those things still needed? And we know we will have additional opportunities with the new money if everything's passed the way it's indicated. And then you address those needs as you tackle the big one first. And then you start addressing the fact that there's a request for additional personnel and resources that are real needs, but what are the priorities of the
But that additional personnel is going to cost us more money.
Oh, yeah, always, in every budget, every
And
year.
That's all reoccurring, and that's why I say, let's say, like, $4 million for this, when we finally get that money, $4 million is going to be designated for salaries. And we use that. I mean, I feel like we can take our fund balance and pay for it this year. But the next year, 23, 24, when we get that, we're gonna have that extra $8 million that we won't have to go after fund balance to pay for.
But you may have needed some, I mean,
I've still got $4 more million left roughly, we think.
So with the strengths, with all these improvements that are proposed and in the process and in the governor's budget, rightly so, there are expectations, if you want to call them strings. But even though there won't be specific requirements like in the current BEP, maybe that indicate ratios, but we will be expected to increase the number of school counselors.
and we should.
We will be expected to increase the number of teachers. We will be expected to increase the number of nurses and so on and so on. So in that total $8 million, those are new positions and salaries do come with those, of course. So yeah, I mean, it won't be hard to spend that money. It's almost already mapped out for us in the way that we have to spend it.
But too,
Mr. Masters.
Ken, I guess my feeling is now, I think the biggest majority is looking at option A for certified. Could we, between now and our next meeting, have Brad do the same thing with our non-certified to see what it looks like?
And
I
is
mean,
that either,
Well,
Mr. Urban proposed in-between steps going from a 1% to a 2% in between, for each step, and applying an across-the-board raise at 6%?
Well,
For non-certified,
yeah,
You'd have to adjust every scale and show the total cost.
We want to adjust the whole thing.
Yeah.
We want to start from scratch. Right, Mike?
basically, yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree, but, to revamp, and Mr. Hale's done a tremendous amount of work over the last few years on kind of tightening up our classified, non-certified skills. I mean, yeah, if we can get it to a point this year where everybody moves forward and we're all progressing, but yeah, we would need to spend next year really digging in and structurally seeing what changes need to happen.
So what you're saying basically maybe is just do a across-the-board raise for non-certified this year, and then look at next year,
Well-
breaking them down like we did this one?
Comparatively, the current scales outside of the teacher, their annual increases are already calculated as far as they have a movement each year,
Right.
as opposed to where
Right.
the teachers were
That
in
did.
their scale, there was not.
Right.
So structurally, they're in a better place than our certified salary scale is.
So I think
Yep.
we just need to close that gap on them as well.
Yes.
But I
So-
think we need to study and see where we
Where
are.
yes.
Don't knee jerk.
Right, let's
Right.
figure out where we're at and where we need
And
to
that's-
be
Well, you
before
all,
we just do.
yeah, you all have applied targeted increases to certain categories of employees the last couple of years. That was different than the rest of the employees. Now, whether that was market driven, that's fine, but that's what you've done. I mean, this year, it happens to be the largest category of employees in number and in budget. So it's pretty significant. So, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I go back to the structure. The big problem with our teacher scale, in addition to the reality that it's way behind compared to our neighbors and across the region, and so to retain teachers, it also structurally had some big flaws with the many years of no annual movement. Stephanie?
Well, the 2%, our neighbors giving 2% straight across the board.
Johnson City is
Sullivan County is
not.
1.5.
Not consistently in the scale. They have different years, different amounts.
But Johnson City cuts off. They
So let me ask
get
you
zero.
this.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what I say,
do we
we
what
need
catches us
to
up.
At 25, we need
roll
to
call,
stop.
if you will, where we are,
At
or
our-
do you just want amount of money? What do you
That's
want?
what we do.
Well, this is option A, that's what it does,
If you want
Keith.
that, I mean, I really
Well, I'm
would
just
like to
trying to
know
know
the numbers.
Right.
and
We're
then
spending a lot more money.
We will fit the numbers to
So-
to the ideas behind any of these options.
Okay, so what I asked him was how to move forward. He wants a number. So do you all want to look at A and D and C and pick a number and give it to him? That's what you want, right? That's the best
That
way?
would be helpful, and the other guidance will be what we will inject into
And-
how
and
we
it-
finalize the proposal.
And it doesn't have
I
to be
would-
one of these numbers, just something.
My opinion is to go 4.5 million on our certified employees.
Yeah, kind of using that option A for it.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I like that.
I'll go for that.
And then, so that helps, and then the cost of, and I hear 6% for our other employees.
Yeah, I like to go based upon, 695,000,
Call it 7.
$700,000 for our non-certified and 4.5 million for our certified.
And then how you spread that out,
Let them
whether it's
tell
a
us.
flat amount or a.
Flat
We can
Percentage.
present it as a percent increase, or we can present it as,
Per
like you calculated, in a flat amount. What is it, rising tides raises all boats. That's the philosophy behind a flat amount across the board.
That gives us 5.2 million.
Can I
Chad?
also interject, Gary, you got 400,000, looks like that you don't, the budget variances, it's gotta be done. There's 400,000. And then I'd like, got up here at the top, 400,000 that you have to do.
No, we have to do, yeah.
Yeah.
What, is that, are
Electricity,
you saying
water,
that's
sewer.
an
Oh,
increase?
whoa, 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 whoa,
No,
okay.
it's the things that have to be done in the
Okay.
budget. We have to add
Non-negotiable.
Stuff
400,000.
needs to step in.
Yeah.
All in that top area.
So we're at 5.6.
But I'd also like to, let's
Well,
look
it's
at,
increased in fuel costs and those kind of things, those
Non-teachers.
annual
Is that
fixed costs.
400,000, Chad, not counting
And we don't
salary?
have the insurance.
No, no, we're basically
the
gonna
total, but
address that all with
Right.
So-
Yes.
and Jerry,
We're at 5.
I'd like to get,
5.6.
I'd like to put another 700 in these
I am
options.
trying to say something.
Well, that's where definitely, as you've done in the past, what I experienced with the board last year, you had a certain amount, you were trying, and you just prioritized and said, we're gonna spend it on these things that are in the request, on those things that
That's
have been
roughly
proposed.
630,000, or $6,300,000. I think, I I'd like to see us get there. And we may be able to get underneath that a little bit, to more 6 million
And that's got
total.
something.
So considering that this has been stuck in the corner for many, many years, I would like to see this go on our calendar for review every year and discussion.
I agree.
So I don't think that is much to ask, but as you can see, it's bad. And we're having to put a lot of money into it, so I would like to see that go on the board's calendar for review and discussion every year.
Sure. I mean, that's as it should be. And that's not a criticism of anything in the past. I'm
Right.
just saying, that's just kind of good practice and standard
Exactly.
operation.
Just, and not to, but will you go back, what's the next step look like with this direction that the board's roughly giving you? Is that to meet with the collaborative conference?
Do you want to engage them?
Right, but I mean, will that happen before our next meeting to see?
You all have a set meeting on April 21st, and we will have one more work session before April 21st. On the 19th, we have one on the calendar, a budget work session. Brad and I, again, can pull this tighter as you've given even more defined guidance. And when we come to the 19th, I mean, everything will be a lot more focused as far as
Exactly numbers.
closer to the point where the board can really consider getting close to formal action on those items, and maybe even all of them, as far as the whole overall budget.
With that being said, Mr. Boyd, is there anything else anybody would think about that they need to consider before then? Because we really need to crank it down then, don't we?
Well, I think that what would make sense is in the budget work session on the 19th, if we can get to a really solid place on this, then they certainly, in their scheduled meeting with the collaborative conferencing process, they will have something very concrete to look at. And if they have any questions or pushback, any kind of suggestions, there would be one more opportunity, one last look at it by the board before you formally finalize the budget.
Mr. Masters got something.
Mr. Boyd, how will we go through the school request that's in here? Is that?
Well, that ultimately, number one, I felt like it's important to see the voice of the school, but reality is it's not everything on there.
But how will we pick and choose though? Or will we?
Well, board's welcome to, but I mean, I will give you a recommendation.
That's what I'm
Yes, sir.
asking. That's,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I don't
will-
know what their need are.
Right, well, and what they've expressed, but some of those, all the way through from personnel, many of those are driven by just, unfortunately, are we in compliance or not? If we prioritize lifting all of our employees in their salary and wages, that's been the top priority. And of course, we're always focused on student needs. But, the question in the school request, can we continue to meet the needs of the students without significantly increasing the cost from those requests? Can we do it without all or many of those requests?
That's where you'll let us
Yes.
know, okay.
And I'd say, add, if we can, not to add more to Brad.
All in all,
Yeah.
But I personally would love, and you don't have to do it here, anybody else may not want to see it. And I know we've had it and I've seen it before, but before we allocate that $700K, I'd like to see who makes what and where it's at, and maybe a way to.
Yeah, he does that. I mean, he gives you
That's in there.
salaries from
I
years
figured
past,
it
but we
was.
can run it on with
Something
increases.
simple or something.
And you can look at, each line item, or in the case of an employee, each employee.
Yeah,
So
you've
you
got
see
the-
the impact on each individual.
Yeah, that's all
I mean, you've got current salaries
Oh,
of
and-
everybody in there, the
I
current
think it's-
So
salaries.
by far
certified
the
and
best.
non-certified in here.
Yes.
Best step
You've
forward
got
to
every
get them a long
employee in
time
there.
on our budget, and I just
I would like
thank you
to-
all for doing the extra stuff
I
ahead.
would like to see it more equitable though. I mean, 15, whatever, 16 through 25, but I mean, that may come. At least this is a
I
good
think that's
start.
where we need to,
This is a good
when
start,
we
right?
get 2 years, 3 years down the road, if we get that 8
Exactly.
million,
Mhm.
we can adjust that
I
in.
think so.
Well,
too.
like these guys said, your first 10 years is solid. So you got a couple years to,
Well,
And
11 through 19, we're not doing nothing. So if we said, hey, we're not gonna do that, we'll just give 5% raise.
like I was telling,
done
there's a
that.
career fair tomorrow at
Yes.
ETSU with prospective retired.
Several of us will be there.
Yes,
Several
that's
of us will
great,
be
and
there.
that would be good to show.
Well, you know, we're kind of, our timing's not great. It'd be great if we could hand
Show
something
'em
to them
that-
and say, this is where it's gonna be, but, you know. And then I'll say that too, and we're still, I mean, even when the board, as you all know as well as I do or better, the board can approve the board's budget, then we have to engage with the county commission.
And I'd like to see us, when we did decide which one we want to do, is to sit there and have a little evening with them and share with them.
Like a Q&A
Yeah.
with them.
I think that'd be
Who's them?
awesome, the county commission.
Well, you know, we are scheduled, I'm scheduled to present to them May 18th, I believe. So, you know, between the time the board approves the final board-approved budget and the time, and before I formally present to the commission, I
Yep.
mean, we should certainly talk about an opportunity like that.
Because I know they really wanted us to try to tighten up the gap, and I think they'd be pleasantly surprised and happy with the way we're going about it.
And,
So,
you know, and the big thing to make the statement, I think it's obvious about what I've heard each of you talk about. Whatever the board approves and presents to the commission, it's not to request a tax increase.
right.
Right.
And we're not asking for a penny more. I mean, I'd like to see them raise the maintenance effort, but I understand why they don't, and we're not going under, so I think this is a great step forward.
So we have, you know, great, you've given us more work to do. We want to make sure the next time we're really tight and we're closer to what you all need based on what we've heard tonight. And we'll just continue to make progress, so we'll come back with a lot more details. And I'll share it with each of you, of course, before the meeting, so you can kind of run through it
Okay.
yourself.
Is that at 5 o'clock?
When is that? When is the next one?
The 19th, 5 o'clock.
next Tuesday. All right, we good?
Except for, remember, tomorrow night, 10%, top 10% bank, so we get a chance to
Start at
enjoy
7.
each other's company again tomorrow night with dinner.
7
With
o'clock.
students and teachers.
Right, yeah.
No, it's Millennium Center, right?
William Center, you know, close to ETSU, next to the carnival.
Did he find the gavel?
See you, Mark.
Somebody steal your gavel.
Somebody, someone got
Meet with them to make sure we get all this.
Thank you. Brad.